Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about classics I think everyone should read. I have 8 books here and 2 honorary mentions, and these are not only my favorite classics but also ones that I just think that everyone should read. Even if they aren't my favorites, I think that everyone would benefit from them or enjoy them in some way. I did a video similar to this over on TikTok, I want to say early last year, and you guys really liked it. I'm going to expand on those books and ideas here, and I also have a couple additions as well. Before I start, I want to say please make sure to like and subscribe. I've been on my grind with content recently and I have some really fun ideas coming up. Also, tomorrow morning, in exactly 18 hours actually, I get my A-level results, so hopefully next video I will have some good news for you guys. And we are going to start with my all-time favorite classic. If you've watched my channel before, you will know that it is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I have this stunning copy and I read this February of 2024. It took me 2.5 weeks to read, which is unconventional for an 800-page Russian novel, but I think that everyone would benefit from reading Anna Karenina because it is such a stunning book. It has some of the most stunning passages and proses and such natural dialogue and characters. It is so rich in perspective and thought. If you don't know, Anna Karenina mainly follows 2 storylines, one of Anna, who is a married woman who ends up running off with her young lover, and then Levin and Kitty, who are both searching for love in different places. Although these are the 2 main storylines, we get a lot of other perspectives in between. We start with the perspective that we don't really get much throughout the novel. I think again that's what makes it so rich and beautiful. This is also one of my sister's favorite classics, and she read it during the summer that she was moving to uni, so she read it across 3 different countries, and like me, when she finished it, she just thought it was so immersive because you really feel like you're part of them and you're a part of the society. I'm going to read a couple of the quotes out to you guys in a bit, but the plot as well, even if it's not twisty, I do think that it's interesting, and I would recommend that you go into this as blind as possible. I was spoiled on the ending because of a series of unfortunate events, but it didn't really ruin it for me. I would go into it blind a second time if I could though. All these reasons that I'm mentioning are motivation for me to pick up other long Russian novels, but I have so much to be read before that. I think the beauty of them is just reading them across a long period of time. There is still a literary genius with the writing of this, and a lot of symbolism and a lot of events and quotes and ideas that you can analyze. For example, the opening quote of this novel is from the Bible: "Vengeance is mine and I shall repay," and I think this is a very interesting way to analyze the rest of the novel and what happens to the characters. He looked at her as a man might look at a faded flower he had plucked, in which it was difficult for him to trace the beauty that had made him pick and so destroy it. Death, the inevitable end of everything, confronted him for the first time with irresistible force. Respect was invented to fill the empty place where love ought to be. Ivanovna explained to him that she was dead because she was bad, which he could not believe, for he loved her. This quote I think has so much to analyze. For example, one character says that a woman is dead because she's bad, which is an interesting idea to go into, but then the child says he couldn't believe she was bad nor that she was dead because he loved her, and that is also another really interesting idea. And all of these connect to so many themes throughout the novel. These are just a few I picked out from looking at the tabs. So many beautiful and interesting and human characters, and I would 100% recommend this to everyone. The next 2 books that I have are Animal Farm and 1984 by George Orwell, and both of these books are incredible novels or novellas that I would recommend for slightly different reasons. Both of them are dystopias. 1984 depicts a more broad society that is governed by a minority that no one can see. They are being surveillanced in every which way, and that's all I'm gonna say. I really think that you should go into it blind. I think going into this blind would really amplify a lot of the elements and ideas and events of this book. If you want something that you can analyze in more depth and you want to look at something through a political perspective and really get into that side of literature and have longer passages and pieces of prose to analyze, then 1984 would be for you. If you want a similar concept but that is punchier, then I would recommend Animal Farm. It is about a group of animals on a farm who overtake the animals and have one rule, which is equality for all, but eventually the smarter and bigger animals start taking more control. Both of these, like I said, are so haunting. His endings are so haunting and poignant, and they really attest to human nature and how the Achilles heel and fatal flaw of all of humanity is that even though concepts like communism and equality can be very attractive for people, in reality it could never work because we are all innately selfish, or we work towards the selfishness of society. There are always going to be people who, once they taste power, they can never let go. Some incredible quotes in both of these. I would recommend both, but if you want something punchier and perhaps more allegorical, then I would recommend Animal Farm. If you want something to analyze in more depth, then I would recommend 1984. But both are iconic classics. I also think looking at George Orwell and his ideologies and ideas and some of the contrasting opinions that people have on him and why he wrote these novels is very interesting as well, whichever way you lean. The next book I have is Beast in the Shadows by Edgar Allan Poe. This was my favorite classic of 2025, and I would recommend this classic for everyone to read because it is so interesting and, again, haunting. And so many people skip over him when they're looking at great classics, but I do think that this is an incredible classic to even start with because it is so short and, similarly to Animal Farm, very punchy. It is about a crime novelist who is approached by a woman who he finds very attractive, and she tells him that she believes she's being stalked by her ex-lover. But as the novel goes on, the lines kind of blur between hunter and hunted, and even the reader's role is kind of questioned, and the ending is impeccably done. There's so much amazing symbolism in here, and I'm so excited to read more Edgar Allan Poe books. The plot is really interesting and it keeps you wanting more, but again, you kind of get to the root of the book and the events, and it is telling us a lot about humans and not only the characters but ourselves. The next book that I have is Franny and Zooey by J.D. Salinger, and I would maybe group The Catcher in the Rye with this, but mainly I think everyone should read Franny and Zooey. This is a book that I'm gonna carry around with me in my bag everywhere because I just know whenever I have a couple minutes, I would love to just open a random page and read a couple pages. So Franny and Zooey is about two siblings. It's kind of split into two parts, although Zooey's section is a lot bigger and the same characters kind of are in both. Franny and Zooey are siblings of the Glass family, and they feel quite outcast from not only society but their families and even perhaps each other and themselves. They both deal quite differently with the passing of their brother to suicide not long ago because he was such a guiding figure and a role model to them. This is mainly told through conversations with each other, in Franny's case with her boyfriend, Zooey with his mother. I think this is just such a beautiful book. It's so beautifully written. There's so much detail. It's so rich. I think there's quite a bit to analyze. There are a lot of literary references, which I found fun as well in a particular section of the book. So many nice quotes and ideas, and you really feel for, I think, the characters and their relationships. Some people say they dislike Zooey's section, but I actually did like it. It grew on me, definitely. And it is quite a short book, and I think it's easy to read. I have my little review here. Salinger writes his novels with starts and endings that don't feel like beginnings or endings at all. This is a book about grief, change, constraints, connections, conversations, and comparisons. Franny and Zooey feel quite freakish, exempt from the world and each other and themselves, and the theatre and literature and religion, yet they are utterly interlinked with them all. I felt a bit out of place in the beginning, but quickly fell into Salinger's unique style, and I only wish he were a little gentler at times. This whole goddamn house stinks of ghosts. I don't mind so much being haunted by a dead ghost, but I resent like hell being haunted by a half-dead one. I wish to God Buddy'd make up his mind. He does everything else same or ever did, or tries to. Why the hell doesn't he kill himself and be done with it? I mean, if you're able to go into a collapse with all your might, why can't you use the same energy to stay well and busy? The way he describes locations and rooms as well is very masterful in my opinion, and it reminds me of the way Tennessee Williams kind of sets up his plays. I think this book should be read along with The Catcher in the Rye if you're someone that thinks Sylvia Plath and The Bell Jar is interesting, because I did not like that book. I'm gonna do a whole video on the classics I hated as well. The next classic that I have on this list is Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. This, if you don't know, is a children's classic about a girl who falls down a rabbit hole and finds herself in a wonderland, and Truly, nothing will ever be as wondrous as this book, and it encapsulates exactly what it means to wonder. This book really makes you appreciate imagination. The illustrations in here are so stunning. I love so many of the quotes and the fun ideas. The way that Lewis Carroll physically plays with the words on the page and attempts to bring his ideas to life, and all the little fun descriptions and the whimsy and purposeful clumsiness of the book is so stunning. I would 100% recommend. Like I said, you fall in love with imagination and wondering, and it fills you with so much joy and happiness. The poetry in here is really sweet as well. I really liked it. We all know the iconic quotes like, "We're all mad here, but I'll tell you a secret, all the best people are." I actually don't know if that one's from the book or the movie, the second part. There are really iconic, fun characters here, like the disappearing Cheshire Cat. I was actually in a toss-up between this book and Franny and Zooey to be the one to carry around, and I'm still kind of thinking about it because, like I said, just poetry all around. Even though it's meant to be a children's classic, it is quite old, so the writing doesn't feel childish. Alice in Wonderland and Lewis Carroll kind of appreciates childishness and the imagination that comes with childhood. Despite it being, like I said, clumsy and whimsical and fun, I feel like there are also some really important lessons in here that everyone would benefit from, especially if you go into it and analyze it in more depth. I recently read an article that my sister recommended to me about madness as a form of escape in Alice in Wonderland, and I hope to do a video essay talking about that in more depth. The next book I have on this list is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. There's a sweet novel about 4 sisters, Amy, Meg, Beth, Jo, and Amy. Their father's off at war, they're quite poor, and yet on Christmas morning they decide to help another family in need. This book follows them across the year as they make friends with a rich neighbor, and it was the first classic I ever read, and I'm so happy that it was because it was so sweet, it was easy to read, and I was so jealous of how rich the sisters were in the prosperity of youth and girlhood. If you have siblings, it's also very relatable. You find yourself frustrated with the characters sometimes. It's funny at times, it's really sweet, like I said, and there are some lessons to be learned with how kind they are to other people or how forgiving they are to each other. Some things that I wouldn't forgive. I'm thinking of one specific scene, an event that happened, that if one of my siblings did that, they would never see me again. This is the only book of Little Women that I've read, but I believe that there are further novels. I don't know if I want to read them though, because some of the events that I've heard happen in them, I don't know. But like I said, I think everyone should read this, particularly young women. The next book on this list, which is similarly sweet to Little Women, is Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rauch. This is a series of real letters by Rainer to a young poet who ended up publishing these. This collection is really sweet. It wasn't incredibly memorable, therefore I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite classics, but I do think everyone should read it just because the writing is so kind and so gentle, and I think it really takes you by the hand and leads you through the art of writing and poetry and even living. There's a real sense of responsibility and care from Rainer, and some really impactful quotes in here, hence why I would recommend reading it like Anna Karenina across a long period of time, even though it is quite short. I have a TikTok or 2 TikToks up of my favorite quotes because there are many from this little book. And I have 2 honorary mentions, and I think both of these I would prefer to a couple of the novels on my main list, but the first is Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. This, I prefer it to Little Women. I just recommended Little Women because I think it has more that you can relate to, but the beauty of Black Beauty is that it is relatable despite it being about a horse. So Black Beauty is a book where we follow a horse from his youth until he is quite grown, and we see how he's transferred from owner to owner and how he feels at place and creates an identity for himself and for the others around him through different ways. He takes from different people and horses many things, and it is so stunning and sweet. It wasn't written with the intention of it being a children's book, but it was, which just speaks to the gentility of it. And the last book I have here is The Trial by Franz Kafka. This is my favorite Kafka book, although I've only read 2. It's about a man who wakes up one day to find himself being prosecuted and arrested, and he doesn't know what for. Throughout the novel, he's trying to figure out what he's being arrested for and what he's being prosecuted for, while trying to defend himself. Kafka writes very symbolically with all of his novels in The Metamorphosis, which I also read, and similarly in The Trial. I think the way that the prosecution is done so weirdly and strangely, and characters' own dialogue and growing understanding of what the world around him is and what it means to be going through this as a person who was quite an upstanding citizen. Although I don't know for sure if Kafka wrote the ending, this was one of the books that he wrote towards the end of his life. I still think the ending was very impactful and powerful, and my favorite part of this book to analyze, in my opinion. The only reason I didn't have this on the main list is because, particularly in the middle sections, it does get a bit tiring or difficult to read. That is a bit of an ironic reason considering Anna Karenina's on this list though. This is a book I recommended to a lot of my friends who were doing law, and I told them to read it and add it to their personal statements, and they did. That is it for today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed. I don't know how I've been filming for half an hour, but I have a lot of editing to do. Hopefully it'll take my mind off of the looming results in 17 hours now, 17 and a half hours. I don't know why I'm anxious, even though I think I did really well. Hopefully I'll update you guys next video, and I will see you very, very soon. Like I said, I have a TikTok, I also have a Substack and Medium, so please follow me on there. And yeah, I will see you guys very soon. This is a book about grief, change, constraints